powerful and they help our hearts accept truth in a unique way. Jesus taught using stories over and over again. Why? Because he understood the power that they have. Stories do so many different things that bridge the theological and the human truth. They are the way we make sense out of things. They help us to communicate the depths of our hearts. Stories help us to be known by ourselves, others, and God. The writer and musician Andrew Peterson explains it this way. He says, God speaks through stories. It's a part of the way he draws attention to himself. Storytelling is a way to tell the truth beautifully. If you want someone to hear the truth, you should tell them the truth. But if you want someone to love the truth, you should tell them a story. You see, every one of us has a life story, and every one of us is living in the stories of others. We each have a part to play in the story of our cities and communities and families, and our stories are happening as a part of God's story too. The better we understand the stories that we are a part of, the better we are able to understand how our lives fit together in these stories and into the narrative of God's greater story. Everyone's story matters. And the better we understand God's story, our story, and the stories of the people in the city around us, the better we can grasp how God is working. I don't know if you've ever been to seminary or not, but in a seminary, you are required to attend chapel every week. And when I was in school, we had all these great and amazing teachers that came to chapel to share with us. One week we heard from the Crown Financial guy, and he shared to us about biblical stewardship. And he would say something like this. He said, God's heart is for healthy stewardship. And if your heart isn't for healthy stewardship, then your heart is not where God's heart is. And so I left the chapel that week determined to get passionate about stewardship. But the next week, a missions guy came in and he said the same thing. And he says, God's heart is for the nations. And if your heart isn't for the nations, and maybe your heart isn't where God's heart is. And so I left chapel determined to get passionate about the nations. And the next week, it was someone talking about pastoral ministry. And then it would be children's ministry and youth ministry and evangelism, until very quickly it became clear to me that it wasn't always going to be about 100% passion about every single thing that was taught in chapel. And one day I came to realize maybe, just maybe, God's heart is for all of these things, but maybe the capacity of God's heart is bigger than the capacity of my heart. And maybe I just need to understand my part in God's larger story. And the more clearly I understood my story and how it fits into God's story, the better I can begin to connect with the larger story of the community, the city around me. Because the reality is this: if you don't do the work of learning these stories and developing a vision from Burden, you will ultimately find yourself doing church work rather than God's work. And I believe God is working uniquely in and through each and every one of our lives, each and every one of our cities and churches. We aren't meant to operate like David wearing Saul's armor, simply copying and pasting the past ministry and vision of other models of others. Yes, we need to learn from others and use resources that are helpful, but we must do our own work of learning our stories so that we can present a contextual and a personal vision for the work God is doing in our unique context with the people God has given us. When we know our stories, we can share our stories in this way. We can cast the compelling vision and help others to love the truth of what God is doing and see how their stories can be a key part of God's work. As leaders, we can't simply rely on all calls and expect people will automatically see how they fit into the vision. One thing I always remind my church leaders is that a call to everyone is a call to no one. But when we do the work of stories and grasp how God is working in the unique burdens he has given us, how they can be a part or be used of his plan to bring restoration in a unique way in this context, then we can present a compelling vision to those around us with a clear call for their unique stories, their unique gifts and passions to become an integral part of seeing the vision come to life. But even in this, we must wrestle with our own limitations. In Genesis 1 and 3, God said, "Let there be light." And in the second half of that verse, the Bible says that there was light. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. You got to understand is that God is the only one who can conceive an idea in his heart and in his mind that comes to fruition in exactly the way he intended. For the rest of us, when we have an idea that we begin to birth that idea, it's either greater than we imagined or it's far less than what we thought we could accomplish. But it is that very process that we experience the depths of God's grace. Our inability can lead us to either great depression or it can lead us to greater dependence and faith. And as we are forced to trust God to complete the good work that he has started.